Welcome back into the Kickabout, a podcast about Everton and music and stuff here on the Blue Room. I am your host, as always, Rob Vera, joined by your other host, as always, Les Roberts. Leslie, I am very excited to be on with you to talk about the most beautiful of 0-0 draws, as well as a few other things today. Before we get started, just a quick reminder that you can, if you like what you hear, and I'm assuming you do since you're listening to us right now, that you might like to follow us on the social media, the social media, as some of us call it. You can follow me at the Rob Vera on Blue Sky. I'm also on Twitter, though a little less on Twitter these days, though I'm still lurking over there because there's still quite a few of you who are still kind of riding the fence there. You can follow Les Roberts. I believe, Les, is it the same on both? Is it Les Roberts? Oh, different one?
On Twitter, it's Les Roberts 77.
Yeah.
On Blue Sky, it's just Les Roberts. I thought I'd claim that one before. So some guy claimed Les Roberts on Twitter, I think in about 2009, and has barely used it, which I'm really sore about. So
yeah,
I've got him first there.
I tried to get, I believe at the time on Twitter, and I've been on Twitter since the early days, which is how I got into, really, that was kind of the gateway drug into Everton, on, the gateway, if you will, into Everton culture, whatever the hell that means, and meeting a lot of you guys. But I remember at the time trying to get like Rob Vera, and someone else had taken it, and I to this day no idea who it is, but therefore I adopted the way more egotistical sounding moniker of the Rob Vera, as if
there's only one.
As if
there's only one worth bothering with. Anyway,
yeah. Well, we've got a jam-packed podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit, obviously, about Arsenal yesterday and the result there. Maybe a little bit of takeover talk, since it appears, depending on who you're listening to, who you believe in, that the takeover is imminent. We love the word imminent when it comes to Everton, whether it's a transfer or ownership, but
it's a very football word, imminent. Very football word.
Yeah, it's imminent, as in, they think if Premier League approvals come, then next week, like, to me, it's like, when are they going to hand him the keys? Like, I imagine this scenario where you buy Everton, and Farhad Mashiri meets you in the parking lot somewhere, and he's got the keys, and they're like, all right, here are the keys. Make sure that this one spot on the ceiling here is a little leaky, so just be careful of that. And here you go, here's Everton, and then the takeover's done, and that's kind of how I like to imagine it. But obviously, everyone's I don't know, I guess excited about that and all the possibilities that they've decided to go ahead and insert into that reality of what a new owner will mean. We'll also, of course, have Rob and Les's Greatest Generation Record Corner. Got a couple of great albums this week, and yeah, I think that's probably plenty. So, Les, I did not listen to post-match yesterday, which I know you were on, primarily because I wanted to keep our conversation fresh, and I'd certainly written down a lot of stuff, but 0-0 draw yesterday. I tend to think, maybe this comes from maybe this is kind of the part of the origin of your tweet before the match yesterday. Les, what did you say? You said we are no. What is it? No side is hanging on
from minute one. I don't think there's any other side that does that, and we look to do that pretty much every game.
Yeah, it was. I want to read it because it was perfect the way that you put it. Just so I can have it. You can tell that I've really prepared well for this. But no, Les had said something that I think made a lot of sense before the game, because it definitely was sort of the vibe, which was Les, right before the match started, or maybe right as it started, you said, does any team in the league just hang on from the first minute like Everton do? And of course, my response was, and their grip ain't that great, bro. because fundamentally, like let's just start off with the top line of this for me. And then, Les, I want to hear your thoughts too, which is that this is an unqualified, like yesterday's result was an unqualified success, right?
Yeah.
Like given the expectations, as I've been thinking to myself since yesterday, given where Arsenal are and given where we are, which are very different places in the world, in the pyramid, what in the table, everything. 0-0 was an unqualified success. For me, obviously, I would like to get to a place, Les, where we're not so celebratory of a 0-0 draw. But look, as Sean Dyche teams go, like I'm not convinced that I almost feel like if we had somehow gotten a goal yesterday and won the thing that Sean would have, that the Dyche would have been even slightly a little bit disappointed in that result. Like I think that 0-0 is just, that'll be on his tombstone someday. The 0-0 draw is the Sean Dyche special. And just to kind of, and by the way, at no point yesterday did I ever think we were going to score. Before the match, during the match, there was no point. Some might say, well, what about that Doucouré breakaway? Actually, the fact that it was Doucouré on a breakaway is even more why I didn't think we would score there. So really, we're talking about 20, like just let me read off a few stats from yesterday just to get your football juices going, get your pants excited a little bit maybe. But 23% possession, 0 shots on goal, 2 shot attempts. I mean, you could not, if you had told me that we were going to get a point out of that yesterday, I would have taken it, obviously. But I will say that there is something that is, I don't know if it's kind of a mini Rorschach test or it's just something else that I don't know how to fully articulate, Les, but there's something about the very narrow pathway of trying to get a 0-0 draw, right? A board draw that is, to me, a very narrow path and one that you can't make a real strategy in every game. But it is one of those that you start, let's say, and let's be honest, we knew that that's what Everton was going to be going for yesterday. And I think that at the beginning, you look at that approach and you roll your eyes and you're kind of cynical about it because you're like, yeah, this is, of course, that's the scope of our ambition, is to just try and, gut out a board draw and get a point at Arsenal. And it's probably not going to work because Arsenal have a really talented set of attacking players. They have a stellar home record. All these things, and obviously our record of late in London. I mean, all those things. And so, 10 minutes, 20 minutes in, you're like, this is stupid. This is not going to work. But let me tell you, Les, you get into minute 70, you get into minute 75, and you're still at 0-0. Suddenly, you're just thinking, this would be amazing. And I even mentioned to Lyndon Lloyd yesterday, who was tweeting about this, that's why it felt like a win to a large degree, because at no point did I think Everton was going to score. And I always was expecting Arsenal to at some point. But in a weird way, by the last almost 10 minutes, I had this eerie calm that they were not going to score, because I thought they just didn't look like they were totally into it yesterday. I mean, they were, but they looked so frustrated at a certain point that you just didn't get the sense that they were going to break through, unless it was a sort of typical Everton thing happening where there's, a freak bounce, or something else that's, something very Everton happens. But I think we found a formula, Les, that works. An unexpected amount of rest, because we came into that game with fresher legs. Let's be real. Arsenal was a bit off.
Yeah.
I don't even know who the match official was yesterday. And I say that, Les, because
awesome. He's a gobshite.
Yeah, but yet he stayed out of the way yesterday. Did you really notice him much yesterday?
There was a couple of things, but nothing particularly out the ordinary. Yeah.
I mean, it was all of the ingredients to a perfect, for us, relatively speaking, low bar, perfect result for us yesterday. Les, what were your thoughts on yesterday? And I don't want to say it means anything in the grand scheme of things, but an unexpected point like that does feel outsized in terms of its importance.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get too enthusiastic, because we've been so up and down this season, had so many bad results. We can't just look at that Arsenal result in isolation and go, yeah, okay, we've cracked it now. This is what we do, because that's what we should have done at Old Trafford, and we may have won that game, but we fell apart. And I always feel like we're just one freak goal away from falling apart, which could have happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it never. That was credit to the team. Credit to the manager's game plan. It worked. We were never going to win that game, like you say. We had one chance through Decore.
Of all people.
Oh, yeah, and I just can't think about that. He should have shot earlier. He could have done so many other things other than what he did.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's where we are. And a 0-0 draw at Arsenal's really good. I think Dave said it yesterday on post-match. There are 19 teams in the league who would happily take a 0-0 draw at Arsenal, because it's good going to stop them scoring.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think by the last 10 minutes, they looked out of ideas. I think taking Odegaard and Rice off was a massive gamble from Arteta, which completely backfired.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of knocked a bit of any momentum they did have. I think that really knocked it out of them. I mean, to put that result into context, we've won twice there in nearly 30 years. So to go there, and one of them was in COVID season. So to go there and win is a tall order.
Yeah.
We've probably drawn 5 or 6 times, maybe 3 or 4 times in that time as well. Wow. Every other season we've been beaten there. So we get beaten
soundly,
yeah. So sometimes by 4 or 5 goals. So we get beaten an awful lot down there. So you can't underestimate how good a result that was. It does take things coming together, like Everton being pretty solid at the back the whole time, Jordan Pickford making those crucial saves, and Arsenal being a little bit off it as well. So yeah, it's a great result, but in the whole scheme of the season, we still are only on 15 points in 15 games, which might be fine for Dice, because that will keep us up. You get a point a game, you're staying up. It's that simple. Yeah. It's a tough watch. It's a hard season, but it would keep us up. But my sort of counter argument to that is we should be better. You want to build on each season, and last season, but even if we overperformed last season and ultimately finished with enough points to get us to 11th spot, we'll be looking at being sort of in a better position than we are now, I think. Yeah. I don't know if I'm being a little bit harsh there, but I think it's not. I'm not being too harsh to say I expected a bit more. We're still only 3 points off the relegation places. It's still really tight down there. It's still going to be very uncomfortable. We've still got tough games coming up. So it is hard for me to get enthusiastic. I think had it been at the match, I think I'd feel completely different, because there would have been an atmosphere where, because obviously when you're at the game, you're more involved and you feel more in it together with the players. Yeah. You'll come away and everyone will be like relieved, and there'll be that big communal atmosphere. I was sat at home with my dad and Joe watching it, and we were all quite bored watching it. As you say, as we got towards the last 10 minutes, it got a little bit nervy, but not because I thought Arsenal could do anything more, that I thought we could fuck it up.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So there was just that little bit of nerves towards the end.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was just a very dull 90 minutes. Now, I'm all for that. I am all for going to Arsenal, Anfield, United, City, Spurs, whoever, and doing that to them. All over that. I would love to go there and do that every game to them, because it dents them as well, which is always nice for teams at the top if you can put a dent in their title charge. But those results need to be punctuated, or those results need to punctuate better results elsewhere. So
yes,
maybe not beating Fulham at home, because they've done all right this season, but there are games at home. Brentford with 10 men, we should have won that. You should be winning that game. So we need to be picking up more wins at home, and these results are those extra points that help to boost your league position. But as I say, the best thing about I think Sean Dyche's time at Everton is he's very good at drawing football matches. Like you said, we probably would have been pissed off to win that yesterday, because a 0-0 at the Emirates is a very nice result. Yeah. But I think to give him credit, he's very good at turning defeats into draws, or turning possible defeats into draws, or not getting beat in certain games. And that is enough to keep you up in this league. It's a pretty dead league, let's face it. It's not great. And just turning those odd potential defeats into draws, it's enough to keep you up. I would say, I'm happy that we've got 15 points. I'm happy that we're not in the relegation zone. But we should be looking a little bit higher, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think you made the point that has been front of mind for me. And I think, I even think back to, some of those, at least what for me were some of those earlier Moyes years, maybe getting into like the late 2000s when we were, we're generally in that kind of seventh, sixth, range, eighth range, whatever. And it was that these types of draws, for as long as I can recall being an Everton supporter, have just been kind of part of the product, if you will, and that when you are a club that is outmatched in terms of payroll and squad quality, you have to go and essentially leverage your endeavor, if you will. Now, some would call endeavor trying to go for a win, but in this case, the endeavor to go and say, we're going to find a way to get something out of this. And to your point, back in those days, that those types of results, when we got them, felt a certain way, but felt, I think, a little better, probably because they were accompanied by us beating the teams that we should probably beat at home most of the time. Not, again, clearly we weren't beating all those teams that we were supposed to beat all the time, or we would have been in an even better position in those years. But I tend to think that, me, Les, I'm a big picture guy. I don't really let any one single result change the fundamental big picture view I have, and nothing has really changed in the fact that from the standpoint that it is a poor return given the state of the league right now, and given what our fixture list was to start this season, that this has been a poor point return, all things considered. Have we had injuries? Yes. Have we had have we just had an outsized number of injuries compared to everyone else? I don't know that that's necessarily true. You can argue that our margin of error is going to be slightly less because of our squad depth and quality, and I don't think you're certainly wrong there. But I think that if you're just looking at this result in isolation, you take it because you have to look at these fixtures as their own kind of contextual scenarios where would you expect to get anything out of a visit to Arsenal most times, given their squad and given ours? No. So to get a point is great. Now, I think where it's tough is the dropped points in other scenarios that you could argue somewhat negate results like yesterday, but I don't want to do that too much. I want to give them credit to the fact that we, our last game out before this, obviously we had the postponement against Liverpool. So got to win, got to draw. December so far, at least, has not been the horror show that we expected. Now, so there are extenuating circumstances to that, but hey, we'll take it. Had to beat Wolves at home, did it. Got this unexpected draw. That's another point. Obviously, there's still a very tough road ahead. No idea when when the derby gets rescheduled. I imagine that's probably sometime in like February or something like that. Or, maybe because January we're gonna have like more of a break built into there. So yeah, I'm guessing that's what it is. But yeah, I mean, look, it's gonna be pretty brutal coming up. Big home match against Chelsea. I personally think, Les, as well as Chelsea have been playing, overall, that maybe this is an opportunity for us to try to get, I hate to say, maybe get a point out of that because God knows we could really use a win at home. And then the trip to City. It seems like we play them on Boxing Day all the time. I don't know what that is.
Weird.
It's weird. But so and then obviously the big game on the 29th at home against Forest, which I mean that's going to be tough. But again, there's it feels like, and this is the outsized importance of yesterday. There's something about that point yesterday that does not give me delusions of grandeur of like, oh, well, get ready for 9 out of 9 for the next 3. But it does make me feel like we ought to be at least competitive. And if you told me that we could get 4 points from these next 3 games, I wouldn't hate that. That would be what? That would be at 8 points this month if Wolves, Wolves was on the fourth. That's given what we thought it would be. It's not the worst outcome. And again, I know the bar is low, but yesterday, at least, especially given the fact that we had no Dwight McNeil, given the attacking talent we were going against, and I think we're in a good position. You mentioned a particular moment yesterday where Odegaard and Rice were taken out. I remember breathing a sigh of relief at that point as well, Les. I don't know, but even then I thought, well, God, they'd probably bring in something off the bench that'll beat us. But Everton made it through yesterday. Full credit to the squad. Full credit to Sean Dyche for getting us that point.
I think the problem we've got is, as I said, Dyche is really good at not getting beat and getting draws. The thing you can't seem to do is turn those draws into wins, and that's because you can put it down to the personnel we've got up front, but if you look at the team and the setup, those front players do not play together at all. They're all individuals. When Decore was played through yesterday for that chance, he was on his own. There was no one running into the box for him to cut across even. He was on his own in the box. There was no one anywhere near him. No one plays. There's no partnerships. There's no teamwork. Now, in the week, Tarkovsky was talking about basically defending is about playing as a unit. If you want to be cynical, you could be saying he's not taking personal responsibility there. He's saying if we can see that everyone's fault, if you want to be cynical. But I know what he means, because you've got your centre-back partnership. That needs to be a partnership.
Yeah.
Then you've got your right-sided centre-back and your right-back. That's another one. Left-sided centre-back, left-back. That's another one. They all form a unit with the goalkeeper. They need to be a cohesive unit. They move across the pitch together with the play. They sort of, the two-sided defenders will close down together. The other two will tuck across. It all works as a unit. And you can see that they do that more often than not. So we've got 4 clean sheets in the last 5. United being a massive anomaly in that. And you've got to work as a unit to do that. You've got to defend together to do that. And they've done it pretty well, because you can't argue. You could say we should have beat West Ham. That should have been out of sight before they even had a shot on target. You could say we should have beat Brentford as well. But if you just want to look at it like relatively objectively, they're 4 clean sheets in 5 games. Defense has done more. Can't argue with that. But it's when you get, included in that as well, you've got the midfield too of Mangala and Garner. They're working as a really good unit.
They were great yesterday.
Yeah, they were really good. Ahead of that, it just goes chaotic. No one is working together. There was a point yesterday where Jack Harrison won a flick on, and Calvert-Lewin's nowhere near him. And it's like, no one's reading what the other player's doing. Again, Calvert-Lewin flicked one up in the air and caught it up himself and ran with it. And there was no one near him. It's like nobody works together. And for me, they're not particularly bad players. They're not great. None of those forward players we've got are great players. But they're good enough to do stuff in the Premier League. They're not that bad. And if you work with them and you've got, you work with them.
Your point is taken on Njai, yes. But you know what it is, Les? I think you make a really good point, because we don't talk about that idea enough in terms of, if I can go into corporate speak here, synergy or cohesion, whatever adjective you want to use. We talk constantly, and maybe this is a testament to the lens through which we've looked at Everton for the last several years, which is scoring is almost this like afterthought kind of, well, if we score, that'd be nice today, But we're always very hyper-focused in particulars on the defensive structure, the defense itself. How is the midfield holding up in terms of allowing, a free flow of traffic right through that part of the pitch, those sorts of things. And I do think that, to your point, I think I hadn't thought about that, but, the Decore chance yesterday in break was something we've seen a lot. We've seen it to varying degrees with Calvert-Lewin as well, where it's one guy, it's independent contracting at its worst. It's one guy, and because of whether it's the I don't know, formational setup, or it's just the strategy that's been deployed of none of you go over this line because everything starts with defense first, and then second is defense, and third is defense, and then fourth, if something weird goes on and you happen to have a chance to kick the ball at the net, great. But I do think that does lead to, those instances where you have a chance and there is a bit of fear about getting caught back out again on the break, so people don't push forward. And I do think that there's a balance to that. And I don't subscribe to this notion that, well, you just can't take any risks ever. You can't, I think that sort of preparing to basically operating not to win, but to not lose is part of an overarching, I don't know, mindset, ethos, whatever you want to call it, that I am looking forward to at some point being out of this club. I don't ever expect us to play like Arsenal or City or what have you, but there has to be a better balance than what it is, because now with the unit part of this discussion, I really hear you, because it does feel like a group of players up front, save for Njai, who has just got here this season, who've been together long enough and been playing together long enough that they ought not to look like a group of strangers at a dinner party. They look like all the husbands of a bunch of like a bunch of women in a friend group get together for a dinner party, and it's all the husbands who like they ostensibly know who the other guy is, but they don't really talk, and it generally devolves into, so how's work, man? It's good. Kids good, yeah, and then and that's the weird vibe I get. Like, why is there not more rhythm? Why is there not more chemistry? Maybe is the right word that I'm looking for. And the only conclusion I can continue to come back to is that it's just because at the end of the day, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're just not very good, Les. Like, I think that Decore is on the wrong side of 30. He's not what he once was. I think that, I think that Jack Harrison's football has increasingly looked like a crime against humanity every time I watch him touch a ball.
I'm still not over those misses against Wolves. I'm still having sleepless nights about those.
I don't know where the ball is going. I mean, he ought to just be a left or right back with the way he crosses the ball, because that would just continue our tradition of fullbacks who can't cross a ball. But he is a hard watch, and I understand that the other options that we brought in haven't exactly been great, and then Calvert-Lewin, whatever he is anymore, I don't even know. But again, I think that when we take a step back, and I do look forward to the time where we're not having the same discussion, Les, but this is a team right now, this squad, that if all goes well over the next several months, and especially into next summer, ownership transition, stadium, contracts that are running out at the end of the season, this should be a team that we forget about as soon as humanly possible. And there really are not a bunch like I know you can't get rid of a whole squad. I'm not a delusionist when it comes to that, but I will say that there's a lot of these players that have been here too long that just it's time to go. It's time to move forward and move on. And with that, Les, before I move on to kind of the next stage of things, the last thing I will say about Arsenal, and I want to see if you had some thoughts on it too. Just because I think we can take him for granted, Les, Jordan Pickford was the biggest of all the reasons. Game plan, structure, discipline, Arsenal being a little off. Even with Arsenal a little off, they should probably have scored 3 goals yesterday at minimum. And Jordan Pickford, once again, I said it on Blue Sky yesterday, it would not shock me right now if Everton were in League One, if Jordan Pickford had not been here these last few seasons. I mean, he is the final line of defense. And I frankly, you see enough great saves that at first on first glance you think there's got to be a bit of luck to that, but when you see it so many times, you realize no, that's what real true elite shot stopping skill looks like. Doesn't mean he's a perfect keeper, doesn't mean that there aren't some things here or there, but my God, how we have kept hold of Jordan Pickford for this long. I would almost argue, and this will be maybe a topic for another pod, Les, that if you want to thank someone or credit someone when we move to the new stadium as to why Everton are still a Premier League side, it starts with Jordan Pickford and probably ends with Jordan Pickford. He may be the man. Jordan Pickford may be the man that built Bramley Moore, just by that low measure. But I think there's something to that. And he was outstanding yesterday. Absolutely needed him to be. And I think that's 6 clean sheets this season. And
I think
some of that's
with Raya and someone and Anna, I think, weirdly. He's been brilliant. You're right. He's that save from Saka yesterday was an exceptional save, but it just seems quite routine for him that he will get down to that. You look at keepers we've had in the past and he wouldn't have got anywhere near that. He really is. I've not got enough superlatives for him. I think the one thing from yesterday that was really good, Arsenal are scoring a lot of goals from set pieces.
Yeah.
They got this set piece coach that they keep going on about, and they score a lot of goals from corners and free kicks. And they were hitting those same corners and free kicks and that have been giving loads of teams trouble recently. And he punched them away, or the defenders would head them away. The whole team dealt well with those set pieces that Arsenal are really good at. And I know he didn't get to every one of them because sometimes defenders got there first. But those defenders need faith in the keeper in that situation. If the keeper's jittery against a team who's really good at set pieces and they're putting in really good set pieces, that keeper's jittery, that defense is jittery, and then you concede. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
They played, like I said before, they played really well as a unit, but Jordan Pickford is key to that. Because he was just great. Even when he had to do unorthodox stuff, like when he just punched the ball up in the air, because I think Havertz was closing them down and he couldn't do much else because he probably risked taking Havertz out had he dived for it, and anything could happen then. He was just brilliant, and he has done more than anyone, because it's not been the goals that have kept us up. Let's face it, it's been keeping goals out.
Yeah. Well,
obviously the Corey's goal ultimately did against Bournemouth, but leading up to that, the saves against Chelsea and things like that, the save against Leicester from the penalty, I think when we got a draw down there, the season they went down, he's been just integral in that. And I am serious when I say there needs to be a statue of him and Virgil van Dijk at the new ground. It makes so much sense.
It would be of him absolutely destroying Virgil. That would be a beautiful.
You probably wouldn't even have to put Virgil van Dijk in there, because everyone knows that pose Pickford's in, where his legs are sort of to scissoring like that. Just put that there. It'd be brilliant.
Oh man, yeah. No, I'm looking forward. I mean, obviously every week it seems like we get new photos or videos of the stadium, especially the stadium at night, by the way. Wow, what a picture that is. And I just think that again, I think when looking at yesterday and looking at the grand scheme of things, and it's all about just means to an end. This season is defined by getting to next season, and no, that is not what we all in our kind of romantic mind sign up for, in terms of the dream of sport and the glory of football. But that is the reality, and I can live with that. And to your point, we see it every season that the sides that come up who play freewheeling football and maybe score, a bucket full of goals, especially early on, they tend to fade and they tend to get relegated. We don't have that luxury. I think my criticism, though, everyone will argue. I think it's an oversimplification to say that, a lot of people criticize Dyche because of the football being ugly. My criticism is that it's ugly and ineffective too far often, and it creates a margin of error when you don't score goals at all, like we don't. It creates the narrowest of paths towards staying up or towards towards getting what you need, and I that's the part that worries me a bit. But in thinking about, and Les, this is where I wanted to transition in terms of the new ownership. And let's be real, we don't know anything other than the fact that the new owner, flies flies stunt planes in Oscar bait films, and I still need to go back and watch Dunkirk and just think about the fact that that's the new owner of Everton Football Club who's flying that plane at the end of the movie. But I think that right now we don't know anything. It's sort of like the new ownership is this mystery box. And we have some idea because we can look at the box and we can see what shape it is and how big it is, but we don't really know what's inside there, right? And so I won't get into speculating on that. And instead, this is the question that I want to frame to you, which is, what do you think in terms of the earliest things that this new ownership does? What is it that you think will be kind of your first litmus test for whether or not this is a serious group of individuals or if it's more of the same? So I'll give you an example for me. My thought was, I think the first big litmus test for them, I think it's easy to say the manager, because who knows what I'd like Sean Dyche to be gone as soon as the keys are taken from Mashiri. But I also know that may not be, there may be reasons not to right away. But for me, in a bigger picture sense, the first big litmus test for this new ownership is Jared Branthwaite and the Jared Branthwaite issue. Okay. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying I'm sitting here knowing that it's an issue of getting him to sign a new contract, because you've come in as new owners and you've articulated the fact that, hey, you are pretty much, you and Pickford, you guys are our best players. You're core pieces we would like to build the next generation of Everton squad around. It could also, frankly, be that Jared Branthwaite has definitely let the club know that, hey, I'm going to go next summer. And it's about, all right, the first big test for this ownership is, how do they position a really good, lucrative sale that, for a variety of reasons, even with the influx of new owners and their cash, we're still going to need for profit and sustainability reasons and all those other things. But to me, that's what I'm most, I don't know why, but I was thinking about this yesterday. And actually I was thinking about it, like, I guess towards, it was like Thursday or Friday, that first report we saw that just felt like deja vu all over again, where City are potentially going to be pursuing him. It's still John Stones, 2.0. And I get it. If I was City, I'd be looking to sign John Stones. I'd be looking to sign Jared Branthwaite too. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, it's a disaster and the new ownership are frauds if we don't re-sign Jared Branthwaite and keep him for at least another couple seasons. But what I do think is that, given he is our most valuable asset at this point, how the new ownership approaches and handles that, I think is going to be really telling about the level of professionalism that's coming in. Do you have anything like that, Les, in terms of what you're looking for from the new ownership to prove something to you?
Yeah, do you know what? I've not thought about that, but that's a really good point. If they come in and this drags on and on until August, and then he gets sold in August, that's a really bad sign. Yeah. If he's gonna go, it's one of them where the club needs to be decisive and say, right, we want this much money for him. Yeah. Tell the player, we get this much, you can go. Tell the clubs you want to buy him, we want this much, you can have him. Because I think that's the position we're going to be in. If they're decisive like that, I think that'll be a pretty good sign. If you get sold quite early for the money we want, everyone gets a good deal, everyone's happy, that will be a massive positive. If they let it drag out, though, and there's a wrangling, the player's unhappy, and you get into that sort of murky sort of wrestling match between the player, the club who wants to buy him, then that won't be a good sign at all, because we've been there so many times before and it never really ends particularly well, does it? I think for me, the boring answer for me would be to get a CEO in, a proper board, and have people at the top of the club who can run it competently. I'm not even saying absolute geniuses in their field of corporate management or whatever.
No, competence is sexy, Les. I've always said that. Yeah. Competence is sexy. I'm into it. Yeah. I'm into it. Yeah.
Just make us a competent football club. Aside from that, I think recruitment, really, you said the manager, which is obviously key, but I think we need to get a grip of the recruitment, because it's been all over the shop for years, hasn't it? I mean, even now, even like last summer, you look at, we bought O'Brien, we're crying out for fullbacks, we spent 17 million on a centre back that hasn't been played yet. Just things like that. It's still so dysfunctional. So I think the key thing for me is to see what profile of player they're going to start buying, and how that sort of fits into, like you say, the bigger picture of the club. Are we buying these players for short term? You know, the way we did with Mashiri, that would be a disaster if we go and get like, you know, captains from each club like we did then and say, let's put them into a team and see what happens. We need a more cohesive recruitment strategy, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. If you want to be a good football club, a good football team, recruitment is key. And I think for me, that's going to be the big litmus test for me, how they perform in the transfer market.
Well, and for me, I think part of what I'm looking for from a recruitment perspective, frankly, is identifying, what is an Everton player, and what is a player that, what does team building look like in terms of putting a larger group of players together who are on a similar career trajectory that, let's be real, given where we are as a club, needs to be the types of players that are just about to hit, and we want to get them to that next level so that we either retain them or we sell them. Because that's, and we've been saying some version of that for years. But if you want to understand, I get asked this a lot because there's a real, like, and I think this is a testament to, frankly, how our expectations have just been completely destroyed over the last several years. But there is a ceiling of how excited I can get about, players in an individual player in a vacuum having an okay season, again, and it's not even about anything that they've done in particular this season, because they've both been just fine this season. But, Ashley Young, Michael Keane, James Tarkowski, if we sell Jared Branthwaite next summer, Keane's out of contract. I don't know about Tarkowski, but he's got to be close. I mean, the entire defense, Les, if we're really honest, needs complete rethink. Now, I would prefer a scenario where Jared Branthwaite is with us for at least one more season. Like, it was if I had my druthers, we'd be getting to a point of, if we had performed more competently in these first few months of the season, it would give us some runway to be able to say, let's play some of these guys and see what we've got. Because let's be real, like, what is the value of Ashley Young? Like, Ashley Young is graded on a curve because he's 50,000 years old. And we've decided that the fact that he isn't out there just dragging ass and, like, hasn't gotten 3 straight red cards this season, that, man, what a renaissance of Ashley Young. Like, at the end of the day, someone like Sean Dyche, who values continuity and consistency and is like, well, we have to play, what choice do we have? We have to play these guys together. And my response is always like, yeah. And what is that consistency of selection of the, the oldest player in the league playing at one fullback position? Mikalenko has to play, I guess, because there are no other options. And you've got Tarkowski, who is definitely looked a step slower this season. He was good yesterday, by the way, but he's definitely been a step slower this season. Michael Keane has had some good games this season, but let's be real, the overwhelming body of work on him is very evident. And so I guess my point is just that if I could have gotten 15 points from 15 matches by playing younger players that have a future here, I would have done it. Now, I'm not saying maybe we couldn't have. I don't know. But the idea is that from a recruitment perspective and next steps, I am ready to move on from the sheer number of stopgap, temporary solution, Band-Aid players that we have in this squad. Ashley Young having a good season isn't worth much because he won't be around very long. Who cares? And by the way, it's not like he's having a good season and we're in 8th. He's having a good season and we're in 15th. What is the value? Like at a certain point, I guess the value of Tarkowski is he is the foundation of being available to keep us in the league. I'm fine. I can give you that. But even in the midfield, Idrissa Gueye has been up and down, but he's been overall okay. But again, he's someone that a functioning club, like there are guys of certain age that, let's be real, in this league, given its speed, given its athleticism, these are guys that ought to be at a functioning club or at a club that's at least competitive at the mid-table level. These should be bench options at worst, you know what I mean? Or at best. They should be guys that, like the perfect role at this stage of now Seamus Coleman's never healthy anymore, but let's say he was. I always thought, the perfect, scenario was like a James Milner type of, career trajectory at this stage where he comes in, for final 20 minutes, gives you energy and gives you some leadership or whatever. Again, it's not even about Coleman, but it's just about how we have been in such a, getting back to your original tweet, Les, we've been in such a phase for years and years and years now of holding on that all of our recruitment decisions seem to lack any cohesion. It's sprinkling a few young players and investments here or there, pay for, old free agents that no one else wants. Hope you can get something out of them, though. Let's be real. A lot of times outside of Ashley Young, who has, to his credit, remained fit, you're going to deal with a lot more injury issues or guys who are a step off, so on. So from a recruitment perspective, I want to see us get younger, and I want to see us have players that we can look at as part of the squad where we can say, hey, we have a squad, but those are the 3 or 4 building block players: Jordan Pickford, Jared Branthwaite, and I don't know that there are any others right now. but I want Njai back next season. I want to see more of Armando Broja. If it was announced today, and this is no ill will towards Calvert-Lewin, but if it was announced today that Calvert-Lewin was never playing another match for Everton again, and that we were going to have to go with some combo of Broja and Beto and Shermidi, sign me up, because at least I'd be learning something new. Do you know what I mean? And that's where I want to get to. I'm just tired of looking at all these old faces, Les. I want to look at some new faces. Let's just see what happens when we start turning some pages around here. And I think that's my main thing when it comes to the recruitment, and hopefully that's kind of the modus operandi for this new ownership group.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of that comes down to, again, what we're going to do with the director of football role.
Yeah.
Are we keeping that role? If we are we keeping Kevin Thelwell because he's out of contract in the summer too? I mean, we are in a really, really unique position whereby we could lose the manager, the director of football, and I'm going to say half the first team in one summer because they're all out of contract.
Don't tease me, Les. Don't tease me, Les. Yeah. That sounds amazing.
Well, no, it's on the one hand, it's like it's the best chance any club will ever have to have a really genuinely clean slate and start again. Move to a new ground, get new owners, new manager, new director of football, and half a new team. That's like that's a bit serendipitous that it's all sort of come together in the one summer. The flip side is it's really dangerous as well, because you've got to get a manager in, a director of football, and half a team who can hit the ground running, because don't underestimate how difficult it might be going to this new stadium, because it's a new stadium for everybody. So every game for the first season will probably feel like an away game. No one will be used to it. There'll be the home advantage definitely disappears when you go to a new ground. When you first go there, if you look at clubs who've moved ground, a lot of them dip. I think Spurs have been relatively okay, but Spurs are always up and down anyway.
Yeah.
Arsenal took a dip from where they were, although they're always consistently Champions League. When they left Highbury, they were competing for FA Cups and leagues, obviously still challenging for Champions League. That dropped off where they were just basically not really competing for cups so much. just finishing fourth every season, which for Arsenal at the time, that's a pretty big drop off. And that's why people got frustrated with Wenger and wanted him gone, because they plateaued. But I think part of that was moving to a massive new ground as well. And it's happened to other clubs as well. You know, clubs have been promoted. Middlesbrough, Derby, they got new grounds, got promoted, had a nice bounce, and then it faded out. So it's a really tricky one, because it can be difficult going to a new ground. It can be difficult for the home team. It can be difficult for the home fans, because no one is familiar with any of it. So I think we've got to factor that in, where, unlike clubs like Tottenham and Arsenal, we're not in a position where we've got the luxury of a dip, because if we dip, we drop out the league. So there's a lot riding on this summer. We've been through the hyperbole, like, I think the last 4 or 5 summers, let's say.
The most important summer ever.
This is Everton's most important summer ever.
But
this one genuinely feels like it. You know, all being well, and we're still in the Premier League. This summer is key, because we've got to get so many things right for next season to not be a disaster. I'm not looking at that negatively, sort of glass half empty, because it is a really good opportunity. But to your point about the new owners, this is where they need to get everything right. So hopefully they've got their ducks in a row. They know exactly what they're doing. You know, who's going to fit in where in the hierarchy of the club. They've got transfer targets. They've got a manager who they know wants to come in. They want him in. It's all going on in the background, I would hope, because we've not really got much time to pull all this together.
Yeah. Well, and I think you make a ton of really good points. And I think that I don't even know if I think, you take the more recent examples, and I think the Arsenal moving out of Highbury and Spurs out of White Hart Lane. Like I think some of the other extenuating, like Arsenal, that I think already started to kind of move down off of their tower from, the Invincibles days, obviously, and settling into, only being top 4 in Champions League every season. And obviously Harry Kane leaving around the same, around about this, there's some overlap there, but, leaving, I think, was part of that. And also I think that Spurs, as much as there's Everton, there's also Spursy, and Spurs,
I
think they're going to be that way no matter where they play, to a degree. But yeah, like, I think my only counter to what you're saying is the idea that, there's this potential drop off when you move to another ground, or that there's real danger of not retaining of home games even feeling a bit like road games, like kind of that foreign. I think it's just a lot of unknowns, right? But I would also say that, my biggest counter is the status quo, which is we don't have a home field advantage right now. We have one in theory. We have one in theory, but the results have certainly not backed that up. This has been one of the more disappointing kind of extended stretches of home form over the last, 2 years plus, Les, that we've had. So I think, and I think we talked about this before when we were kind of talking about the idea of what an opportunity it is to turn the page and kind of maybe let go as a fan base of a lot of, maybe at least some of our cynicism and some of the Everton and the opportunity to move into a new stadium and define something new, make something new. I mean, I think part of that is that, as much as Goodison is this temple, and I mean, God knows I love it. I'm going to be there and be there next month for 2 games against 2 teams we're probably going to lose to, but I don't care. I love the feeling of that place is what it is. But I also think that that no place, no matter how romantic your feelings are for it, or how much of a home field advantage you have has been associated with it over the years, can completely cover up for the mass deficiencies in the squad that plays in it. And that's to me, I think that's what your point about needing to get things right in the summer, I think is obviously true. What that looks like is going to be interesting. I think this is a long-term project, and I think that all I want to see next season is progress, even a little bit of progress, but just make us not an embarrassment. And I think I'd be good for that. Good from that standpoint forward. So, okay, Les, let's finish off. Let's talk records, Les. This is look,
Yes.
if you are still with us on Kickabout since version 3.0 with Les and I has come into effect, and you noticed that we've kept this a pretty stable segment, and hey, this is our podcast and we'll do what we want, and we're going to continue to talk music. Les, this has become one of my favorite things. We each, for those of you who may be new for whatever reason listening to us every week, Les and I, because we are part of the greatest generation, men of similar age, fine gentlemen from a time long forgotten called the 80s and 90s. We really love music and we love albums. Generally speaking, I think the idea was we would each pick an album from 80s, 90s, maybe the first 10 years of the 2000s. We got a little out of that this week, Les, with your pick, but I don't care. I loved it. So we've been doing this every week. We've gotten good feedback from you guys in terms of enjoying the album talk. Obviously, guys, let us know any of your feedback if you're enjoying the show. If you're not, that's fine too. I just, any feedback's fine. I don't really care. But we've had some really good albums of late. This week, Les, we had some really interesting choices. We each picked an album. We each had the other person listen to it so that they could bring their thoughts to the show. Les, I want to start with your album first because I had heard this album before, and I think I'd listened to it once and thought it was pretty good. And then I just, for whatever reason, it's like one of those things where you just forget about it and you never listen to it again. But going back and listening again, I think I was way more fond of it this time. So Les, tell us what record you picked for this week.
Yeah, so that's exactly why I picked this album. There's been a lot of Oasis hysteria in 2024. Let's make no bones about that. One of the saddest things I think about that is if they do get back together full time, we may never hear Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds again, which I think will be a massive shame. So the album I picked is the self-titled debut album, Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. I think it's just, for me, it's a 10 out of 10 album. I think Noel Gallagher as a songwriter, I don't think he gets enough credit. He has been consistently putting out quality album after album. There was a bit of a dip in the mid-2000s with Oasis, I think.
Yes.
I think the standards dropped a little bit. I think they were getting back on form with Dig Out Your Soul in 2009. This High Flying Birds album would have been the next Oasis album. I think you can hear
sounds
some
like
of the
it.
songs.
I want to talk about that.
You can hear it. It would definitely have been the next Oasis album. Some songs have got Liam Gallagher all over them. But I think this would have been a real return to form for Oasis, and I think they would have gone into the 2010s in a much better shape than they sort of entered the 2000s. I think they would have gone on to be, I think it would have been another great period for the band. Didn't happen, obviously, they split up. But this album, Noel Gallagher took it, and I think he took, basically, it might not have been as good an album had it been Oasis, because that brings its own baggage and its own expectations. I think with this album, he made it his own album. It's still very Oasis-y, but I think he made it his own album. And I think just from track 1 to track 10, I think there's 10 tracks on it. Just everyone's a hit for me. I think there's no filler, there's no bad songs, and it's a very underappreciated album. As you said, it's one of them. I listened to it when it came out. Probably didn't listen to it again for another 10 years, I think. Jay got into it and he put me back onto it. And since then, I've just had it constantly on rotation. I think it's one that, if you did listen to it back then, and you've not really listened to it since, or you've never listened to it, give it a listen, because there's so much going on. There's so many good songs on that album, and I just think it's just part of Noel Gallagher's consistently good output. I think it's one of his best for me.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I have to admit, when so Les and I we have a WhatsApp chat about the show, obviously, and about life and about other things too. Yeah. But I'm always looking forward to when we do this podcast, approximately once a month, where we do the exchange of albums. Like, we each have our next pick, and I'll admit, Les, when you first picked this one, I was kind of unsure. I'm like, am I going to get on to this? Because look, I'm allowing for the possibility that we're each going to pick an album, and that could be today, where one of us is really into it and the other one's like, it's okay, and that's fine. This is the point of this is an honest cultural exchange, Les, this is, and I do think that I was kind of prepared to be underwhelmed. But man, I think you've hit a few really spot on points. Like, I think the reunion of Oasis for this set of concerts that's not at all about money, is really been a kind of a cultural flashpoint these last several months of kind of re-energizing the discussion of the overall importance of Oasis in terms of their place in rock history and all of those things. But I think this album, honestly, Les, made me think a lot about the eternal question, which oddly to me has always felt like a bit of a false dichotomy of people going, well, who's more important, Noel or Liam, to this thing? I mean, I don't want to come off as like oversimplifying this thing, but Noel's always been the more important of the two when it comes to Oasis. He writes the songs. He's the talent. Like, he's the talent. Liam has maybe the vocal talent, if you will. Like, in terms of you think of the most iconic Oasis songs, and he's the lead singer. And I do not take that away from him, but Noel's the one. Like, no, there is no Oasis, there is no band, there are not any of these albums without Noel Gallagher. Now, Noel is also a huge prick, just like Liam is. I think they're both. I think
there is that. He's not quite in separate the art from the artist point yet, but he's a bit of a dick, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, like I almost view the Gallaghers as wrestling heels. I mean, they're a lot of what they say is just because it's about getting the reaction out of it, and they were very, very savvy in terms of knowing how to act like rock stars at that time in a way that got attention, even when it would come off as kind of brutish or snobbish behavior. I don't care. I don't hold my rock stars to like some some super high standard of being all nice people, for sure. But when I was listening to this album, I think one of the things I thought about, and this is not really a shot at Liam at all, but I think Liam loses way more without Noel than Noel does without Liam. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
definitely. To your point,
100%.
I listened to this album, and to take it a step further from because you mentioned that this would have the set of songs would have been the next Oasis album, which sounds right to me, because when you hear the songs, this is a collection of mostly like 4.5 minute song, like it's just 4-minute rock songs, all with great hooks. Hooks are a big thing when it comes to rock music. It's like you can make great rock music, but can it also like serve and be effectual in a pop sense as well? Like, I think Noel certainly has a knack for whether it's the way he does a chorus or a key change. It's not like his lyrics are like the most complicated thing in the world, but us being a songwriter is not just about the lyrics, it's about the totality of the thing. And he wrote just a bunch of great songs. Now, I immediately, to take it a step further on the Oasis front, thought to myself, and I don't know if this is controversial, but I immediately listened to this and thought this would be the best. This would be the third best Oasis album.
I agree completely.
Am I off? Now, I liked, Dig It Out was fine. I liked Heathen Times was okay. I mean, there's some stuff there. There are people who have. Oh God, what's their the Cocaine album, the third album?
Now.
There are people who have a huge soft spot for that, and I do not begrudge you that, because with Oasis, part of loving Oasis is about your soft spots for them, and I get that. But in terms of song quality, I felt like this would have been the third best Oasis album. Noel doesn't have like this like massive vocal range, but yet what is in his range sounds great, and there's something very comforting about his voice that also just sounds great on an album. Like, he has a lead man's voice. He has a lead vocalist's voice, even when he's not always the lead singer, but he's got it, and I think it works really well. I think the main difference between this and and when I say an Oasis album, if I'm just using the first two, like their Imperial period first two albums as a frame of reference, I think that the guitars they're scaled back. They're still important, but they're scaled back a little bit. Like, I do think that Oasis albums maybe rock a little harder, But
Yeah.
like, dude, like that song aka What a Life is kind of a bit of a dance banger almost. Or
Yeah.
I loved Record Machine, but I thought Record Machine could be a Liam track almost, because I could kind of in my head mentally
Yeah.
say Liam would make sense on these few songs and what have you. But the bottom line being that the songs themselves were just really, really good. The ones that stuck out for me, Les, and I'm sure you have like, particular ones that are, personal favorites of yours. But I think for me, I love the album opener, Everybody's on the Run. I
Yeah.
love If I Had a Gun. I just think the wordplay in that is great. I also will point out that this is my kind of my big final observation. There's this sandwich chain here in America called Schlotsky's, and their slogan is "Funny name, serious sandwich." You know what I mean? Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds is kind of a terrible band name, and a lot of these tracks have terrible track names. Like, he literally has 2 songs on this album out of 10. One called AKA What a Life and one called AKA Broken Arrow. Like, and then he has one called like I want to live in a dream in my record machine. Like, he has some cheeseball titles to these, but I'm
Yeah.
telling you, the songs themselves are great. They're really, really good. And as a fan of that kind of 10 track album that just where everything is good and there's no skips, I think by that standard, Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds is a keeper for sure, Les. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm so made up because that's exactly how I feel about it. Just to go back to your point on sort of who's most important, Noel or Liam, I think I've got to defer to the Pete Doherty quote on this. Have you ever seen that interview with him?
No,
Where
what do you
he
say?
stood outside the record shop in England on the release day of Be Here Now, an MTV interview. He's not like rockstar Pete Doherty, he's like 40-year-old Pete Doherty at this point.
Wow.
And he just comes out with this classic. He goes, I subscribe to the Umberto Eco view that Noel Gallagher is a poet and Liam is a town crier. And that sums it up nicely, doesn't it?
I think that kind of does, to be
I think
honest.
that's the dynamic. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I tried with the lottery to get tickets and I wasn't able to. And maybe something will come up. I'm sure I've got other financial things that I could be tending to instead of spending huge money on going to see Oasis. But I'm glad they're playing together again. I will be interested to see how it all sounds. I think that what we've discovered of late is that some bands take a long hiatus and they come back and they still sound really good, and others maybe not so much. Do their voice, like, they seem like Noel's voice still sounds pretty much the same. I don't know how. I think I heard a Liam solo album not long ago that was pretty decent, and I think he mostly sounds the same, maybe a little bit deeper, but
a little bit rougher.
yeah.
So I went to see him in the summer, play Definitely Maybe,
Okay.
which was really
How
good.
was
And
that?
he still bangs them out. Yeah, really good.
Okay.
Really good. Yeah.
I'm
So,
sure they'll be great
it was
then.
nice to hear that album, sort of every song played on it. But yeah, I've no doubt they'll be amazing still.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, that should be good. But yes, Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. And by the way, just a little plug. After every episode of the Kickabout, I have been putting out just a quick Spotify playlist of a few tracks from the albums that we pick, and anything else that we may happen to talk about as well. So I'll definitely do that after this episode as well. Okay, now on to my album, Les. I picked. Okay, so let me preface it with this. So the album that I picked was one of those albums that I think is part of the reason that I sort of started this with you, because I think other than just the fact that I'm a shill for talking music and talking albums, that there is something of a unique opportunity in this dynamic between you and me of having two guys of similar age, even though I'm younger, that really are, kind of grew up in the same general period of music and have a lot of similar frames of reference. But there are always these bands, especially because I think there's this idea that sometimes that, especially from music from the 80s and 90s, and even early 2000s, that there's this sort of like people in the UK are listening to most of the same stuff that we're listening to here, and vice versa, because there's just, obviously the same language, but a lot of the same stuff was played on the radio or on MTV or what have you. But there are always those bands, I think, for instance, of that are, for whatever reason, were just bigger in the UK and never quite, even though they're great, never quite took off here, and vice versa. So, for instance, Manic Street Preachers is one of those bands, for instance, who I understand. I think Manic Street Preachers are great, but I also know that most people here don't know who Manic Street Preachers are. I think Pulp suffered a little bit from that in terms of their status there versus here, whereas like The Cure have been as big in America, maybe even bigger in some ways than they were in Britain, or like there are all these kind of strange examples. But the band that I picked and the album that I picked is one of what I would consider to be of the last 20 plus years in terms of indie and alternative rock, one of the true American institutions of a band, and that is Spoon. And the album that I picked is, speaking of, funny name, Serious Sandwich, Ga 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 is the name of the album. And the trick to saying it, Les, is just think in your head 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ga 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 Ga.
Okay,
Ga. That's how you say it.
There
you go.
I'm glad you told me that, because I was going to struggle with this.
So the bit about Spoon is that they really never made every album they make is at minimum very good, and some of them and a lot of them are great. They just don't really make bad albums. They're consistent and they are sonically adventurous. Ga 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 came out in 2007. And Spoon is a band. They're an indie rock band from Austin, Texas. I've seen them several times live. They put on a great show, but they have been putting out albums since the late 90s, and
surprised me.
Yeah, late 90s, but really began to sort of hit their stride once we, got into the early 2000s. So I would say that Spoon are like more compatriots of, like the Strokes and the Interpols of the world, to a degree, and bands like that. But Ga 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 Ga, which is a funny thing to say every time I say it, is one of my favorite of their albums. And Les, part of the reason I picked it for you is because I thought this is going to be one of theirs. Like, if I was going to tell someone where to start with Spoon, that I think this is at least one of the good candidates of maybe where to start. But I think it also gives you kind of an accurate picture of how kind of let's just say, I like to say, sonically adventurous they are, with like, vocals playing in one ear and then it's a different set of vocals in another ear, or kind of, time signatures that'll mess with you a little bit. And then also the magic sauce of a song. I was pretty sure there was a song on there that even if you had thought you'd never heard of Spoon, almost everyone has heard the song "The Underdog," because it's probably been it's been in a bunch of movies, or probably been in commercials before. But Les, I'm really curious, because I do think, based on what music you've told me you like in the past, that I thought there was at least something here that you might like. But tell me what you thought of Spoon and this album in particular, and what impressions it made on you overall.
Yeah, so I'd never heard of them. I don't think, or if I can't work out if I've never heard anything by them until you gave me this album. I don't even know if I'd heard of them. So it was like, I was really going into this one completely blind.
Love it.
And I saw it was out in 2007. And I've got this thing whereby, like, I think there's a lot of music from that time that's not aged well. There's a lot of music from the mid 2000s that I think it's called landfill indie for the most part, that it's really not aged well. Everyone loved it at the time and it was great. We all had like bootcut jeans and stupid haircuts, and it was brilliant. And it's translated as badly, it's aged as badly as that. So I was going into this thinking, oh man, what's this going to be like? But you'll be glad to know I was pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
I think the first track is class. It's
Don't
really
Make Me a Target.
Yeah. The second track, I think that's one you've really got to listen to with headphones, because, as you say, there's different stuff going on at different times, and it's quite a bold track, and it's
for a second track. I was worried about the Ghost of You Lingers is one of those tracks where, you know, it's definitely the quirkiest song on the whole album. And to put it as track 2, I thought, if I'm going to lose less anywhere on this album, it's going to be on track 2. But it's a grower. It's kind of one of those growers, but I totally get what you're saying.
And I just got it. It's funny you say that even if you've never listened to them, you might know like this song, The Underdog. Apart from track 2, every track, in fact, no, even track 2, I felt like I'd heard it before. And I was trying to think, what does this remind me of? We're obviously at that age where we've listened to so much music.
Yeah.
If we hear something new, my default is to go, right, what does this remind me of? It sounds like something. And I could never quite place any of it, but all of it sounded weirdly familiar. And I think the standout for me with Don't You Ever, Rhythm and Soul, like you say, Don't Make Me a Target. They were the ones that stood out, and I think I'd go back to again and again. After listening to this, I went back to listen to some of the back catalogue. So like you say,
really?
this is a good entry point. So yeah, I went onto Spotify and I was like, right, let's listen to more of these, because I couldn't place them. They're a band that I can't quite pigeonhole. I can't quite say what their sound is.
They sound a little different on every album, but
and
vocals are the consistent part. But they do sound different on every album.
And I went back to that first album from '96, I think it was.
Oh yeah, that's a little bit of a rougher listen for sure.
And I enjoyed it. It's completely different. And I listened to like a few tracks off the second and the third album. And as you say, it's all very different. But they're definitely a band I will go back to now and listen to more of. I was, as I say, it was a nice surprise, because I was thinking, what if I don't like this album? I was just like, but I've listened to it a few times now, and I say they are the standout tracks for me. But yeah, I really did like it, and I think you're right. There's a lot of different sounds in there, and it feels like they're not afraid to just do different things and not be tied down to a particular sound, or thinking, you know, this is what we sound like, this is our audience, let's just keep doing that forever. They definitely sort of progress the sound, and there's definitely like post-punk influences in there, and you can sort of hear where the different bits are coming from, but can't quite place it, which is good. That's what you want your musical influences to be like. You don't want to think, oh god, that sounds like them. You want to hear things and think, yeah, this sounds like something, but I can't quite place it. So yeah, I was bang into it.
I think if you go back and you just start listening to like their first album, Telefono, is sort of, I think it may even be an EP. I can't tell technically, but it's definitely a debut album. It's a little rough, but starting with like 98, like a series of sneaks, I really get into it. But my personal favorite Spoon album is 2001's Girls Can Tell, which first of all, I think that's a great name for an album, Girls Can Tell. And it's just but it's also one of those, like, you know, it's not 10, but it's 11 tracks, and it's, you know, real succinct. They're very good about, like, you know, like that album is 11 songs and 36 minutes.
36 minutes.
This song is
taking too much time.
This one had a lot of, like, what was interesting about this and Noel Gallagher's Flying Birds is both 10-track albums. They both had killer final tracks as well. Like, remember, Black Like Me is the final track on Ga 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 Ga, and it might actually be my favorite song on the album. But it's like that and Don't You Ever, and I love Finer Feelings, and you know, you got your Cherry Bomb. Like, some of it will sound like this sort of upbeat chamberish pop type stuff, and then it'll get a little more electronic at times. There are other albums of theirs that sound more rock or sound a little more psychedelic. You know, their most recent album definitely sounds like more of a return to like a bluesier electric guitar. So like they're just kind of, you know, I like bands that, don't get me wrong, there are some bands who there's a comfort in them making kind of the same general album each time. Yeah. And then there are others where it's their willingness to just decide, like, not going to be defined by a genre or walls, and I'm going to just kind of do something different each time. And I think Spooner like that to a degree, but they've just remained, you know, incredibly consistent. And I think you can kind of throw a dart at a dartboard of their albums and land on one and be like, man, I'm going to find really good songs on this. But no, Spoon is one of those bands that, to me, this is my last question for you. You know, and I don't know who to compare them to, like, you know, in terms of like, you know, there's something though about their sound where I'm listening to them and I'm thinking, of all of the American imports for you guys that have really caught on, the Killers, the Strokes, Interpol, and I'm not saying Spoon sounds like those bands necessarily, but I do think that they have a lot of elements that I would think. I don't know why UK audience is not eating Spoon up, which that sounds funny with the word. I don't know why, but I kind of wonder that sometimes because I think that there's something about that kind of indie rock sound of theirs, like and then I started thinking, well, there's a whole kind of a collection of these American indie rock bands that you guys may have heard of, but I don't know that totally broke over there from that 2000s period, like Wolf Parade or the Walkmen, or less, to a lesser degree, like Wilco. Wilco was, kind of big in the 90s and the 2000s, but I never knew why I broke there. But anyway, if I can use my tiny little kickabout platform here on the Blue Room to push one band, Spoon is excellent. I think you guys would really enjoy him, and Ga 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 is just a fun as fuck album to say out loud, and it is just as fun to listen to. So no, glad you liked it, Les, and I look forward to hearing more of your future Spoon thoughts as well. But I also just want to thank you for reigniting my love for the self-titled debut of Noel Gallagher's Flying Birds, which should have just been called The Flying Birds, or do you have to have Noel Gallagher in there? Why not just Noel Gallagher? I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Isn't his name big enough? Does he need to add like something at the end, like like Frank Lampard's Everton? Like
that's what it is. It's one of them.
I don't know. All right. Well, Les, last thing I wanted to ask, Les, in our final closing, just because we're near the end of the year, this is a random music question. I'm putting you on the spot here. This is the time of year where I'm always thinking about the albums that came out this year that I really liked, and I'm not going to ask you for like a big list or anything, but did you have a couple of go-to albums this year that came out this year that you just could not stop listening to? Because I always love getting, this time of year especially, I love hearing other people's picks, because that usually leads me to not only those albums, but then helps me to go down some fun rabbit holes as well.
Yeah, so off the top of my head, I've got 3.
Okay, I got 3 too. Perfect.
Justice, Hyperdrama.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah. Michael Head and the Red Elastic Band, Loophole. So basically, he's the lead singer from Shaq and the Pale Fountains and the Strands. Like,
you love Shaq, Les. No one loves Shaq like you love Shaq, man.
Legendary Liverpool band. I went to see him on Friday night. He played the Philharmonic. Did like a 2.5 hour set. It was incredible. So that album as well. And Bill Ryder Jones, If You Die.
Another Liverpool. Bill Ryder's Liverpool.
He's from our side. Yeah, okay. He's Wirral side. But yeah, Wirral
side. Ooh.
Yeah, he's Wirral side.
I love Wool Rock.
You know what?
So that's good.
You could do worse than look into Wirral bands. Actually, we got a pretty rich musical heritage.
Oh no, you don't have to tell me. Like my record collection has, it's because you got to remember, Les, like because of when I used to do the radio show, like so much of my sweet spot is late 70s, early 80s English post-punk, and Liverpool had a ton of those bands, but and again, especially for an American audience who I think kind of views this band as sort of a novelty one-hit wonder, and you only think about their hair or whatever. But go back to the fucking Flock of Seagulls first out, their first early albums, they're incredible. They're an excellent band. They were really, really good. Echo and the Bunnymen, I know they're Reds, but that Echo and the Bunnymen, great band. Like there's a lot from Liverpool, and I could go on, but those are definitely some bands. No, I'm always trying to expand my Liverpool specific band knowledge, because obviously my record collection's full of quote unquote northern English bands that are Liverpool, Manchester, and everywhere, Salford, everywhere in between. But I'm always trying to learn about new ones for sure. So no, good. Okay. So those were those 2. Wait, what was the third one there, Les?
Bill Ryder Jones.
Bill Ryder Jones. Okay. I'm definitely going to check those out. Okay.
Sorry, I've got one more as well.
Go for it. Yeah, it's fine.
So Spin's latest album as well. So they're another Liverpool band.
Are they the band that's spelled SPINN? Is it like 2 N's?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So their latest album.
I think back in the day when we were doing those playlists for the little zine that we were doing for a bit. Why am I blanking?
Yeah.
Turn, yes.
Yeah.
I feel like they were on there for some. Yeah. I got to check them out. I remember liking them, so I'll definitely check them out.
It's good summer music.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's all sunshine and gales. It's good.
Well, there you go. And I love, I'm a moth to the flame of summer music, especially like summer guitar rock and stuff like that. Okay. I got a bunch, but really my three, the ones that are just kind of top of mind, and they're super all over the place. But one is, unless I know you're sick of hearing about this one, but this was a comeback after a 16-year hiatus. Guys, I cannot express enough how great The Cure's recent new album is. I cannot believe that at age 65, Robert Smith still has those pipes, man, but he sounded incredible. It is Songs of a Lost World is the name of the album. And it is for my money, it's their best album since Disintegration in 1989, which is one of their all-time classics. It is that good. And it's also a perfect winter record. I don't know. It was something about it coming out, I think, like right before the election and when everything went bad, I guess. But there's something very comforting about that Cure album, and I can't recommend it enough. The other one is one, Les, that I know I've recommended this group to you. And by the way, this is another band, guys, that if you get a chance to see them when they tour over there, they're one of these pop groups that is absolute, like, I just want to live in their weird alien pop world. But Magdalena Bay, they are a duo from Miami, and they have their new album is called Imaginal Disc. It's got a weird album cover with the lead singer girl having a disc put into her head. It looks really strange, but awesome. I cannot tell you, this is their sophomore album. Both of their two albums are absolutely, like, if you just love like incredible electropop, something that also feels a little bit spacey and weird, but also it also just sounds like, man, this is a banger. This is just full of bangers. This would be a hit anywhere else. It's my favorite kind of pop music right now, Magdalena Bay. And then the other one, which is the Total Curveball, which is an absolute heavy metal masterpiece that I imagine Les might have no interest in, but I'm going to try and make my best pitch. And that is Denver, Colorado's Blood Incantation. And yes, Blood Incantation. And the name of the album is Absolute Elsewhere. And let me tell you, when I say, yes, it's a heavy metal album, but it is literally two tracks that are about, 20 to 30 minutes, like 20 something minutes each. Okay. And it is basically, it is the sound. It sounds like a heavy metal album that has been sourced from the outer reaches of space, and also feels like Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, kind of, all rolled into one kind of idea. There is a little bit of that, like, ooh, sound of the vocalist.
I'm just looking at them now, and it's like, okay.
No, they're scary looking dudes, but
yeah.
but let me tell you, like, when I say it's a metal album, yes, there's metal. It is metal, but there are also parts that are, slow and contemplative. There are parts that are just epic and it feels like you are listening to an album that you are beholding all at once. I don't know how to describe it, but and I'm not like a super metal guy. I would classify myself more as like psych rock, stoner metal type, like Queens of the Stone Age and Caius and bands like that are sort of my sweet spot. So certain metal albums have to kind of hit me in the right way, because there's some of it that I find unlistenable. But man, Blood Incantation, as scary a band as that sounds, made an absolutely beautiful piece of art this year that I absolutely think is worth checking out. So those are my three albums. Les had four. We'll put a little bit of everything we talked about today on the playlist. We got plenty for the playlist, Les. That always makes me happy.
Yeah.
So, all right, Les, before we wrap up, any big Christmas? Les, did I lose you there?
Yeah, you back?
Oh, I'm back.
There we go.
I'm back. Okay.
Yeah. Go on. Sorry, missed that.
No
Any
worries.
special Christmas plans?
Yeah, any special Christmas plans? Just didn't know if you were just doing the same old thing or if you got anything cool going on.
Yeah, do the same old thing. Just family dinners, lots of cheese, lots of wine.
Yeah.
Just that. What about yourself?
Well, just, as relatively usual, we're headed to Texas to see the family. However, my mother is currently renovating a room that would normally be like the guest bedroom space in our old house.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I are staying at this this kind of cool hotel in that area that is called the Gaylord Texan. So I know it is quite a name, but
I mean, can that be the podcast title?
yeah, the Gaylord Texan. Is that? I feel like you're taking a shot at me right now, and I don't like it. But Les, you're the executive producer when it comes to the name of these episodes. But what's interesting about this hotel is that it's like one of those like giant resort type hotels, but not like a resort like a beach resort, which I would of course prefer, but like more of one of those giant hotels where there's like 5 restaurants inside of it, and there's all this extra stuff to do. But anyway, their bit or their shtick is that they do, like, you go in there at this time of year, and basically there has been a Christmas nuclear mushroom cloud that has just completely launched there, and it is just covered in Santa and Christmas trees and all this stuff. And they have some weird exhibit that we bought tickets for where you go through these tunnels and these rooms that are made completely of ice. Like, you have to wear coats and you go in there and do all this stuff. I mean, it sounds to me like a glorified walk-in freezer, but we're paying significant money to go see it. So I'm hoping for some really cool, like, weird ice sculpture shit or whatever. But I'm very excited about this. So we're gonna do that and have some like meals with the family and do all that. And we'll of course be at my house, with my family and going to the sisters and doing all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It's just sort of a weird, quirky Christmas this year where we're staying in a hotel, which I've never done before. So that'll be interesting. So, but yeah, no, this will be, this will almost certainly be our last kickabout for this year. We'll be back in January for sure. And again, I'm not against doing this more than once a month. It's just kind of been the, with the congested fixture schedule and everything, that's just kind of how it's been. Obviously, by the next time we come together, a lot is potentially there to have been changed, Les. We have new, by the time we talk next, Everton could be in a far better or, far more precarious position at the table. We're going to have a new owner, almost certainly. We're going to have, potentially a new manager. January window opens. There's just so much that happens between episodes of Kickabout. But just want to take this last opportunity to thank all of you who listen to the Kickabout and listen to the Blue Room. And a special thanks to Les Roberts, who is my main man here, who has just been a rock on this and who
always a pleasure, Robbie.
Hardest working man in Everton podcast. He and Matt Jones, I swear to God, they put in the hard yards so that guys like me can show up once a month and look competent. So, but for Les, I'm Rob. We will see you guys next time for more Kickabout. Obviously, coming up this week on the Blue Room, we're going to have, if you haven't listened post match yesterday, go check it out. We're going to have Blue Monday. We're going to have the Everton byline and all that good stuff.
And subs, mailbag.
Subs, mailbag.
Chelsea, everything.
We are raw dogging you guys with content, and we're not going to stop. So hopefully we'll have some nice, hopefully some halfway decent Everton results to talk about. But for Les, I'm Rob. We'll see you guys next time.